40 minutes. So the last thing I really want to chat about is the really crazy stuff. ChatGPT, OpenAI, AI in general, machine learning. I mean, it's crazy. First of all, just what's your thought on ChatGPT in general?
I mean, it's definitely it's awesome to see, where things have shifted and where things are at. I think you and I were talking about it. My biggest thing is like Microsoft is now back in the game, right? Like now they're the hot
Yeah.
place, and everybody wants to work, with Microsoft now. Um, I definitely think that, some flavor of it will be the future. Um, I think the challenge that everyone is running into is how do you make it fundamentally useful without fundamentally shifting the whole world,
Hmm.
right? Because I
Okay.
think everyone is scared, like, oh, ChatGPT is going to change everything. But
Yeah.
it's also a small community of people that are actually using it at scale.
And yeah, the thing is like it's making national news on in some occasions. Like it's been on like national news
Yeah.
stations lately,
Yeah.
but in other ways, like I at Christmas, talked to all my family members. Only one of them was like, wow, that's incredible. That's crazy. The rest of them were like, cool, like let me know when it's a
Yeah,
robot,
exactly. When it's a
like
thing, right?
yeah, like let me know when it can do my job for me, Like,
Yeah, yeah.
it's like,
And I
okay.
kind of think it's very similar to like crypto. Like it can do cool things, but
Yeah,
how many people are actually doing it is
right.
a very small world. I do think there's a lot of cool functions and full capabilities, mostly in the marketing space. And we're going to be layering in a lot within high level, a lot of it where it can help spin up some baseline, text blocks or help you create a
Right.
blog or,
Yeah.
just doing really cool things in that nature. But is it ready to take on full conversation? Is it ready to doing, full on back and forth, natural, correction, things like that? Like, I don't think it's at that level today.
Mm.
Maybe in 5 years,
You think
it'll
5?
be at the, I think you'll start seeing people try to get into that world in 5 years
Okay.
where it's fully autonomous.
Yeah.
That's probably going to be, a decade where you're going to see that as kind of common play.
Right.
Like even you see stuff with Alexa, right?
Right.
And Amazon's actually turning down that business. They're, you know,
Wow.
so there wasn't a lot of adoption with Alexa as big as it
Mm.
is.
Yeah.
Siri, you could ask it questions and it can give you responses, but can you have a full-on conversation with it? And you start, people are always trying to give the random questions to see how it responds. I think that's going to take time. And then not only time to develop it, it's going to take time to actually make that common play
Yeah.
where that's a thing.
Yeah. No, I would agree on the fact that I don't think it's there yet today.
What I'm really interested in is when they start releasing, kind of the packaged code base
Mm.
so that you can build your own library
Right.
for your own internal business.
Yeah.
And I think there's going to be two kind of industries that's going to pop up. One is, people who can really build AI algorithms for, call it a manufacturing company, right? And that manufacturing company builds, I don't know, cranes. And so now the sales guy or the salesperson can go in, type in kind of the requirements, and then it spits out kind of a perfect proposal and
Sure.
everything else.
Yeah. 100%.
So there's going to be that industry that's going to, and then I think cybersecurity is going to be just as important because people have to protect that data
Yeah.
because all
100%.
it takes is someone to inject negative content in there. And to
Right.
your point, right, it can start sending out false information
Yeah.
and things like that. And I don't know if people have paid attention to OpenAI. It doesn't do anything with current news,
Right. Yeah.
anything current or anything actual that's happening today. And because I think they're worried that now you're exposing false information and
Right.
opportunities and
Yeah.
vulnerabilities and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
so they're trying to protect it as people are trying to test it out today.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing is like I think the next step naturally is connecting it to the open live internet and having it have the ability to cite its sources. That's like the number one thing where it's like, and that's what Google does say though. And so that's where we're kind of like, is this going to be a conversational Google where it's like, hey, I looked it up on the internet and here's the things that I found and here's why I think that, and like give a summary with sources basically.
Yeah. I mean, my take on kind of the 5 year mark is where Chat GPT is not a thing. Like
Mm,
it's just everyday world use where, you know, where you don't realize it's this other thing. It's like right now, when you need to search something on the internet, what do?
Google.
Google, right? Like
Right.
it's not even a brand anymore. It's just a thing you do,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That's kind of what I mean, where you'll start seeing that shift in mindset starting in about 5 years. I definitely agree to your point though. Like companies going to pop up and do really niche specific things and come up with cool ideas. That's going to happen. And, you always get the internet marketer take on it where people are now selling courses on how to do stuff in
ChatGPT.
ChatGPT. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like, come on, guys.
Yeah.
If it was me and if I had to start a new business today, I'll tell you, that one of the biggest indicators is Google. That they did the red flag that ChatGPT could ruin their whole business, right?
Yeah.
And if I was going to the business, I would try to figure out how to build a new search model
Yes.
that could allow advertisers or businesses advertise within the
Yeah.
results.
Yeah.
And you can go to market so much faster than Google can pull it off because they're running this massive, what is it, a $200 billion a year operation with kind of this existing model. So to try
Yeah.
to figure out this new search landscape and then shift the whole business into it, it's going to take them a really long time. And I think somebody else could come in and easily jump into being the next multi-billion dollar company because it becomes very conversative and very natural. And you just have to figure out how to offer it for free to the consumer and
Yeah.
letting advertisers, be a
Yeah.
part
Make
of
money
it.
off the advertising. Yeah.
And now
And
you're the
that's,
next Google.
dude, honestly, I see it. The thing that I truly see is one, if Google's that worried, Google has one, a bigger team than Microsoft. They have way bigger global team than Microsoft. And two, a bigger data silo than Microsoft. They have way more data just generally about local businesses, national businesses, like everything is on in Google's database versus Microsoft has, they just have like LinkedIn. That's really their biggest and most valuable data silo, I think.
Yeah, I mean they have Bing. I mean, both of them are large, massive organizations, right? I think the challenge though is you're fundamentally changing what's making you billions and billions of dollars today.
Right. Yeah.
So being able to create something new and change that model is a huge feat because you
Yeah.
also have to remember you're talking about hundreds of thousands of employees who don't want change, who
Yeah.
don't want to do new things, unless if you're brought in as a new team there. But you know, a smaller team can come in and create kind of a smaller world
Right.
and grow it. They don't
Yeah.
have to unchange anything. There's no deprogramming that's involved.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where like I know Google will accomplish it. So you know,
Yeah.
don't misconstrue what I'm saying. What I'm
Yeah.
saying is if somebody else wanted to play, you have the opportunity to jump in and take over a $200 billion market. It's just
Yeah.
like
I mean that
if you can't,
yeah.
being a smaller player in that world is
Yeah.
still a really good
It's still
game
good.
to
Yeah,
be
it's still
in.
I'd take 10% of $1 trillion market cap for
Yeah,
sure.
exactly. It's do you want to create courses and make decent money or do you want to make crazy money? So
Yeah.
that's kind of where like if I had to start over, like I'd kind of figure out like really sit down and figure out how advertisers can be a part of it and then how do you offer, the concept of search through, an AI driven conversation and kind of
Sure.
play in both lanes there. And if you could pull
Sure.
that off, I think you're
I could see it as a concierge service. That would be probably the first place of like if you need a knowledge content, think about Masterclass, right? So masterclass.com is a multi-million dollar company now. If they implemented something like this where they loaded all of the transcripts for all of the authors and all of the, courses that are there, if I said I want to learn a little bit more about this, it could ask me questions about my personality, how I learn, and then it can match me with people based off of that. So that's really about the only thing I can see. But in terms of like, yeah, digital ads, if you have direct access to the information, you don't need to go through a link. So
yeah.
I understand that. And, Microsoft doesn't even have a search product right now, really. I mean,
Well, they have Bing.
they have Bing, but they don't, who cares? Bing.
Well,
I
it's
don't know. Maybe I severely underestimate Bing, but I definitely have not actually used Bing in a long
yeah.
time.
I mean, it's still big, but in the grand scheme of things, it's smaller compared to Google. But it's the default search provider of anyone who has a new computer around the
Yeah.
world.
Windows.
A new
Yeah.
Windows computer, right?
Yeah.
So, how many people don't download Chrome? How many people, just kind of use the stuff out of the box? No, over time, and those same people are also getting pop-ups and banners and stuff like
Yeah,
that to
those
take that
and those
over.
people are also the ones who are not spending a lot of money on search results because they're probably not even on their computer very much because the search experience is just not as good as Google. Google is much, much better,
Yeah,
at returning
yeah.
information.
And this is kind of the fun part of this conversation because, like, if you kind of take a step back of like Google, you need a plumber. What is the search term? Plumber near me,
Right.
right? And so now think about that in the chat GPT space.
Yeah.
Like, hey, I need a plumber. And it naturally knows that you're looking for plumbers within
Your
your
area.
location,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so now can you get advertisers to play into that, or can it give relevant resources
Well, and is
within
it better?
context? And that's kind of my point, right? Like, is it easier
Right. Is
and
it a better
ultimately
user
easier than Google?
experience?
And
Yeah.
that's kind of what I mean of like that's your opportunity to play in a $1 trillion industry
Yeah. But in
versus
terms of local
creating a course or
service,
something.
yeah, no, it's just that in terms of local service, I don't see it being a true competitor. But in terms of like knowledge sourcing, recruiting, because that's what I was going to ask you is like, man, you've done a lot of hiring, and I know we're coming up on our time now, so I want to make sure I just get your thought on this. You've done a ton of hiring, right? I'm sure either you or the people that you've employed contracted to do the hiring and the initial screening has technical interviews that they have to go through. They have kind of an initial screening. Tell us about yourself. I want to know about your resume, all that kind of stuff. And that's meant to really get to know you and your skills. But now it's not the same, right? Now I have a tool that can give you exactly what you're looking for, and you won't know until you talk to me and see I have no idea what I'm talking about. And so it's like we're losing that kind of filter, and we're going to constantly just need people to people interactions. I see that, but I don't know. What do you think? What do you think about
Yeah,
how the hiring process is going to change?
I think the hiring process is still going to come down to your point, right? That human connection is going to be super important. And then it's also important to suss out, well, you could have someone who's extremely book smart, but are they street smart or can they really understand the application use and actually put it in a real world use case? That's really what you have to suss out for. Now, I think, there's always a blend and everything always really winds up in the middle. You have the extreme where you don't use, technology and then you use technology, but the answer is always in the middle. And I think, the middle is somewhere where maybe the first part of it is using, some sort of conversation based tool like ChatGPT to do kind of the initial questions and maybe initial, first part of the screening or something like
Right.
that. But I don't think that you'll ever be able to blindly hire somebody to accomplish something in a world where there's nuance.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
don't think, technology is able to predict that nuance or
Sure.
sense emotion or just read
Sure.
it, right? And I think until we're there, the human level of it is always going to be the more important strength through that interview
Yeah.
process and recruiting and really growing business as a whole.
Yeah, 100%. And I definitely don't think AI is going to take over the interviewing and hiring process. What I more so mean is now you have to talk to somebody in person to know if they're not full of crap or not, because this tool is available to everybody for free and is so openly available on the other side of that form that you're filling out. You don't know,
Yeah.
like, and so that's what I'm saying from a logistics standpoint. You had to hire how many people this year?
Yeah. I think we hired close to 150.
150.
Yeah.
Okay. And so out of how many applicants do you think, if you had to guess, of like how many people
Uh,
actually applied?
10,000. Yeah. I mean, and now how many of those are actually valid applicants and stuff like that? Like,
Okay. Well, so this is where I'm getting to is if we're talking about 1,000 people that are applying and 90% of them have access to ChatGPT and they make it to the interview round, right? Like now, how do you combat that? And it's the same thing with education. That was my next point is like, as our kids are going to start going to school, and like I have a brother who's 15 in high school and he found out about this. And now he's like, yeah, I don't really do my homework anymore. It just kind of tells me the answer. And
yeah.
I usually average about a 90. And I was like, you're not learning.
Yeah. It comes back to the ones who take the system, for what it is and do it the right way. They're always going to be available and do the right thing. People that try to game the system, use examples like Indeed. If you put a job post out there, people don't even realize there's many people who go on there looking for a job and they're just hitting apply, apply, apply,
Yeah.
apply.
Yeah.
Don't even read it, and they're just sending out their resume.
There's a Python script for it now.
Yeah, exactly, right. And now if you add more filtering questions, that does help filter out a little bit. You might want to go on the advanced side, adding more technical questions or something. Now you have ChatGPT. So the filtering process just gets a little bit more challenging. But the ultimate answer, at least in the today world, and what we do is you gotta pick up the phone and call and talk to someone and hear them out. You can at least get a good gut feeling on
Yeah.
if they're gonna,
Yeah.
pass the snuff test or not. But
Yeah.
there's also interesting stats of like for every person that stays with you longer than a year, you have to hire you keep 2 out of 5 people to basically pull that stat.
What do you
You know,
mean?
so for every 5 people that you hire, 2 will stay longer than a year.
Oh, wow. Okay. So less than
So
50%.
yeah, less than 50%. And I think the next stat is like a half of or a quarter of people, at scale stay to 3 years.
Yeah.
So the 2 that stay, you only get, you know, maybe one of those 2 people will make it to 3
Yeah.
years, but it's a
Maybe
very
half of them will
small
stay.
amount,
Yeah.
right? So you gotta get the number up to 20
Yeah.
hires to get people to stay over 3 years, and
Yeah.
that's on average, and of course, there's better statistics, better companies and stuff that you wanna hedge against, but it's just a interesting thought process, and you're absolutely right, the hiring model and the way that you're trying to bring people on is fundamentally gonna change, but I think you just always have to layer in, like, true human interaction is always gonna win.